The National Guard is deploying 2,000 troops to Los Angeles because of the clash over immigration raids. An hours long standoff between protesters and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, or ICE, erupted Saturday morning near a Home Depot in Paramount. Tyrone Bowman live. According to the Los Angeles Times, the Trump administration said it would send 2,000 national troops into Los Angeles after a second day in which protesters confronted immigration agents during raids of local businesses. The move marks a major escalation in Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration and came amid concerns from some officials in California. The Guard has been deployed to Los Angeles previously, but it has been during widespread civil unrest, including the upheaval associated with the 2020 protests following the murder of George Floyd, as well as the riots that occurred after the Rodney King verdict in 1992. And why was there a riot in 1992 after the Rodney King verdict? Because the white police officers were found not guilty by an all-white jury after they savagely beat Rodney King almost half to death. That's why. See, I have to fill in the blanks because these people, when they're writing, they try to make things seem as simplistic as they possibly can. But because I'm a person of history and I read and I study, I make sure I pay attention to the details. If Rodney King had never been brutalized by a bunch of racist, corrupt cops in Los Angeles, there would have never been a trial. He would have never had to stay in the hospital for almost a year. The city of California would never have to have settled an court settlement with Rodney King. And it took 2 trials to find those cops guilty. Los Angeles has seen several violent clashes during the recent immigration raids, but they have been limited to isolated areas, including the Home Depot in Paramount, a location in Los Angeles' fashion district, and at the Civic Center. Jessica Levin, law professor at Loyola Law School, noted that when the National Guard was sent to LA before, it was because California requested it, and the response was coordinated. Erwin Treminsky, dean of University of California, Berkeley Law School, said in a text to the Times that Trump has the authority under the Insurrection Act of 1807 to federalize the National Guard units of states to suppress any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy that so hinders the execution of the laws, and Joe Biden should have done the same thing in 2020. But he called the move very troubling. Such deployment typically happened during extreme circumstances. Here it seems it was an early response, and I fear that this is to send a message to protesters of the willingness of the federal government to use federal troops to quell protest. The protests are going to get larger and larger. And unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of bloodshed, and people are going to get killed. That's going to be the reality. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get nasty. In the most serious recent incident of protest violence, a crowd gathered Saturday near Home Depot at 6400 Alondra Boulevard in Paramount for a demonstration that escalated over the course of the day into a fiery and tumultuous clash with federal agents. The protest began without violence as demonstrators chanted, "ICE go home," and "no justice, no peace." Some protesters yelled at deputies, and a series of flashbang grenades was deployed. "What are you doing?" one man screamed out. Times reporters witnessed federal agents lobbying multiple rounds of flashbangs and pepper balls at protesters. After a time, some protesters responded by throwing rockets and other items at ICE vehicles. One person used their own vehicle to speed toward deputies, spurring the deputies to deploy flashbang grenades at the car. Many of the protesters did not appear to engage in these tactics. You know, if this had been a bunch of black folk out there protesting, the article wouldn't even be written like this. A raid is a raid. A clash is a clash. A mob is a mob. An insurrection is an insurrection. Around 4 p.m., the confrontation near a Home Depot at 6400 Alondra Boulevard was declared an unlawful assembly, and officers arrested protesters in Spanish and English to quiet the scene immediately. During the protests, at least one protester was injured, witnesses reported, and a Border Patrol official said an agent was hurt. By 7 p.m., about 100 protesters had gathered in the area of the 710 freeway near Atlantic Avenue and Alondra Boulevard, where some were lobbying rockets and bottles at LA County Sheriff's deputies. At one point, someone set fire to a car which became engulfed in flames. Deputies responded with pepper spray, canisters, and ordered them to disperse. In a statement shortly afterward, the Sheriff's Department said, "We are planning for long-term civil unrest and collaborating with our law enforcement partners." The department said around 8 p.m. that it had arrested 2 people on suspicion of assaulting an officer. One allegedly threw a Molotov cocktail, and 3 deputies were struck, causing minor injuries, the department said. It did not make any other arrests earlier on Saturday. However, U.S. Attorney Bill Esali said in a post on X that federal agents had arrested more than a dozen people who impeded agents in their ability to conduct law enforcement operations. "We will continue to arrest anyone who interferes with federal law enforcement." The Department of Homeland Security could not immediately be reached for information. Earlier Saturday, Tom Bowman, the Trump administration's border czar, said officials were cracking down hard on the unrest and that the National Guard will be deployed to the city Saturday night. California Governor Gavin Newsom confirmed Saturday that federal government was moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. Newsom criticized the federal action in a statement Saturday evening, saying that local law enforcement was already mobilized and that sending in troops was a move that was purposely inflammatory and would only escalate tensions. "There is currently no unmet need," Newsom said. "This is the wrong mission and will erode public trust." Ladies and gentlemen, when the midterm elections happen, it's going to have the adverse effect. People are angry, they're upset, and they're tired of foolishness. And they're going to come out and they're going to vote like they've never voted before. If this is boring to you, go someplace else. That's my answer to you. How about that one? So a group of protesters on a street corner shouted expletives, and they were cussing. And there was nothing but noise shortly afterward. The grenades exploded at their feet, causing them to briefly scatter. A Times reporter watched one protester gather a bag of trash and light it on fire in the middle of Alondra Boulevard, half a block where immigration agents were gathered. This is a difficult time for our city. As we recover from an unprecedented natural disaster, many in our community are feeling fear following recent federal immigration enforcement actions across Los Angeles County. Reports of unrest outside the city, including in Paramount, are deeply concerning. We've been in direct contact with officials in Washington, D.C., and are working closely with law enforcement to find the best path forward, LA Mayor Karen Bass said after the National Guard deployment was announced. Saturday's scene in Paramount followed raids across Los Angeles on Friday that led to the arrest of 44 people on suspicion of immigration violations and another on suspicion of obstructing justice. In his Fox News interview, Bowman, the president's acting U.S. Immigration and Customs Director and now border czar, made unsubstantiated claims about the people who had been arrested, saying they included, this is the crap that these folk always say. I'm not going to even repeat the garbage that he said, So Pete Hegseth said he may deploy active duty U.S. Marines from Camp Pendleton in Southern California if violence continues. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. It's common sense, he wrote in a social media post. In Paramount, a city that is 82% Latino, Protesters gathered along Alondra Boulevard on Saturday after reports that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers were targeting people at a Home Depot. A group of protesters stationed themselves near the exit of the 710 freeway. And this article goes on and on and on, which is unnecessary because it's just becoming redundant at this particular point in time. So the bottom line is 2,000 National Guardsmen, soldiers have been deployed to Los Angeles. For what purpose? You'll find out. Never surrender, never quit.